math is not memorization. Math is practice. 80% of fights someone will encounter on the street will end up on the ground. And when it comes to the ground game, this is where someone that trains in boxing or Muay Thai would struggle in, and where someone experienced in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would dominate. I think life is about, of course, making the most of it, but also creating memories that you'll remember in the future. When you're 70, you're lying there, you can't move anymore, remembering the amazing life you've had. Experiencing love, I think that's very important as well. And obviously achieving a sort of success that you're happy with. Not necessarily material wealth, but achieving success in your perspective.
Guys, before we get into the podcast, 91.6% of you guys are not subscribed. So please do hit the subscribe button, since it will help get even crazier guests and blow up the channel. So yeah, let's get back into the video.
Hey guys, welcome back to another podcast from Z-Lane. Today we have Russell here, who is our U20 captain of the football team, as well as a 43 IB predicted grade scorer. So yeah, and he's also 1 day away from completing his whole high school career. So yeah, Russell, do a little introduction about yourself, man.
Sure. My name is Russell. I just finished grade 12. My favorite subjects, I think, would be biology and chemistry. And I love to play football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Russell, could you also briefly explain and tell the audience what subjects you took for the IB program?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I was quite a interesting combination, because normally people that take my subjects go into medical sort of degrees, but for me, I wasn't looking towards that. So I decided to take HL Biology, HL Chinese B, and what else was that one? And HL Economics. And then for SL, I took SL Chemistry, SL Math AASL, and SL English Language and Literature.
Nice. Pretty solid combination, I personally think. So, before we jump into the academic stuff, I'm just really curious, what type of person would you consider yourself as? So, to help you, answer this question, if we were to ask your parents to describe yourself in 2 words, what do you think your parents would say?
I think they would say, first of all, very disciplined. I think disciplined, and also responsible, definitely.
Very interesting. And I'll probably also say pretty sporty. You're pretty good at football as well. So yeah. So the first thing that you've actually told me in that, which I was pretty surprised after you filled in the entire form of, topics that you want to discuss, is that you've studied way too little and you somehow still managed to pull a score of 43 in IB. So could you elaborate more on what you mean as studying too little, and what was your overall strategy?
Sure. I don't think I genuinely processed how important tests and exams were until I received my first predicted grade in, I think, the end of grade 11. It was okay. I think end of grade 11 I got a 42, but then for the real predicted I got a 43. But between that amount of time, that's when I started to focus more. But even in grade 12, I felt like I was slacking a lot, and I had very little motivation to genuinely put in the work, put in the study time that a lot of my friends and counterparts were doing, which obviously left me behind. And it was sort of this mindset that if I didn't genuinely believe myself that I was studying the most I possibly could study, that would give me an excuse for when I get the test back that, it was because I didn't study. It was because I didn't study that much that I didn't get such a good score on the test. So it was kind of like this mental back channel, which allowed me to provide excuses for when I didn't do as well on tests. But later, of course, near the IB exams, this probably cost me. I mean, I haven't received my genuine IB grades back, but I know that as a fact, for economics specifically, that was the last exam in the succession of exams. And for that one, I studied maybe 4 or 5 hours, and that was the whole syllabus as well. So that was very difficult. And I definitely felt that if I spent more time studying there, I could have done a lot better. But there you go. That's the price to pay for having excuses for doing not so good on tests.
I mean, that's a pretty interesting thing, because from the people that I've podcasted and interviewed before, most of them, they would spend so much time studying. And actually Anson had I don't know if he told you, but he had a whole stack of past paper that he drilled, constantly drilling, literally a whole dictionary of past paper. And
yeah,
I guess
I think Anson and I are a good comparison, because Anson has a very formulaic approach to studying. I bet you he's got a schedule. He's got exactly what he needs to do. His parents are on top of him, all that stuff. But for me, I don't know. I kind of go with the flow here. I can show you something actually. I didn't make a plan at all. So I started a month before, and I spent one day doing a topic of each subject, and I would write down what I did every day in like this small notebook, and it was very random. So basically, I was kind of improvising my study schedule, and I don't think that's an idea or mechanism that I suggest for everyone, but I mean, it's possible.
Hmm. So that's pretty interesting. So it just shows that like you don't really like for some people you actually don't need to do the practice or like do so much work, and then you can still get like solid predicted grades. But obviously with the IB exam, you obviously need to study. But with the predicted, it's all about like the tests mainly and like the consistency over throughout the year, I guess. Do you have any like side tuitions or like softwares that you personally use yourself?
Side tuitions, as in like tuition, like one-on-one with the tutor.
Yeah, like a one to
Oh, sure.
many.
Yeah, yeah. I started a math. I started a math tutor in the right when the math IE started during the summer, and I had a math tutor there for about 6 months, and then it stopped after that, and that's all for tuition.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I feel like people have the sense where like if you go to like more tuition, then you're probably gonna get like a higher grade because you spend more time. But I guess it's more about um studying like not being distracted at a certain time and studying efficiently and effectively rather than the having like the amount of time correlate to the entire process.
I just think that for a lot of people, tuition isn't really what they think it is. Tuition isn't isn't getting like a teacher to help you out. It's more of a forced duration of time where you have to study. A lot of people need that. The people that lack discipline, that lack the focus and effectiveness to really get their head down and do the work. However, I guess tuition, in many parents' point of view, is a way for an adult to supervise and force their kids to do work, and that's where tuition lends value. However, if you want to really use tuition to get to the next level, that's when you have your own discipline, but you use the expertise of the tutor to enhance your knowledge while not relying on that need for discipline. So I think tuition can serve different purposes for different people. And just because for me I didn't have a lot of tuition, that doesn't mean that it's a very successful way to move forward in the IB.
Yeah, pretty insightful, and I pretty much agree with you as well. Like it really depends on like your own case and like I guess like what's your overall interest in the subject and if you actually do like pay attention in class, because some people they don't really pay attention in class and they rely on tuition outside. But I guess like the overall tip from like an IB 43 here, I guess it's like you just have to pay attention in class and just trust what the teacher's learning and what the teacher's teaching, and those are the things that will be covered in like the IB exams. So with the bio HL and Chem SL, which is not as bad as bio Chem HL combination, but it still seems like a pretty scary combination. So what was your overall experience with these two subjects in particular?
Sure. Bio HL it's difficult to start because they're overloading you with content. It's a very content-based subject. It's all about memorization and being able to use specific key terms that they're looking for in the mark scheme. So these are skills you cannot develop right at the start of grade 11 unless you are genuinely practicing memorization and you were very effective and you were very focused on your development in grade 10. So when people start in grade 11, they shouldn't be too worried about getting the good grade and stuff like that. They should not worry about that, but instead worry about kind of developing this connection between using key terms and using this important terminology, as well as linking that to their memorization to be successful in biology. And that's what I found, because I definitely improved over the time of grade 11 because I focused on developing these skills. A lot of people feel like they need to be succeeding off the start or else the subject isn't great for them. I entirely disagree with that. And I've seen that through a lot of my friends, a lot of grade 11s now, that it just comes with time. Biology is, I would say, a relatively easy subject as long as you are dedicated to improving that and improving those two skills. And for chemistry, there's an entirely not new, but different outlook to how you should study chemistry. For sure, it's kind of perceived as a way more, demanding, difficult, and less intuitive type of subject because you're working with math and using math as a language to study chemistry. And as such, with math comes intuition and comes, you know, some sort of talent to, solving problems. It's not entirely memorization like biology is. So my approach there was to study biology like it was a memorization quiz, and to study chemistry like it was math, and to study the different approaches to approaching different problems. So that would be my main tips and my main ideas that I've come from taking BioHL and ChemSL.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Russell. I find this like pretty interesting because with Bio HL and like Chem HL, I'm pretty sure like more than half the grade is going to be taking this. And I guess like many people will probably be like nervous about, the first grade. And as you've mentioned, like the first grade really isn't the most important thing. It really is just developing skills over time in the whole entire IB until the end. You have all of the skills necessary to combat the IB exams itself. So with like math AASL, what was your overall experience with that? And did math 10 HL really make like an easier time for you?
Okay, so yeah, I did take Math 10 HL for about 3 months, but it is known that I was one of, I think, 5 or 10 people that dropped um, to standard. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the higher level in HL is a great preparation for the pace. I mean, obviously, you guys don't have Mr. Ho anymore, but you guys still have, I think, Mr. Young. And the pace at which they go and the depth in which they study each math topic is exactly what you're going to expect if you plan to go into the higher levels. But even when you go into grade 11, I found that a lot of the HL students still struggle because math ASL is not conceptually hard. It's actually the same content that you're learning, even for the math standard kids in grade 10, even more so for the math HL kids in grade 10. It's the same stuff. You're learning the same stuff. It's just the tests that have more difficult questions and have more hidden ways of applying the knowledge that you've learned in class. So when it comes to my experiences in math ASL, I had a rough start, and I think a lot of people did. And I think a lot of people overestimated how hard the class would be and underestimated how hard the tests would be. It's very important to be able to facilitate the transition between what you're learning in class and being able to readily apply it to different situations during the tests. That's a very important skill, and that's what made me rather successful in my experiences with math. But math is definitely one of two subjects that I found very challenging for me.
Mhm. So with the entire, math course, do you think this ideology of practice makes perfect, so doing and drilling a whole lot of past paper would work?
Yes, I think that's much more effective than like studying each topic or each class's worth of content like you would biology. Math is not memorization. Math is practice. And to game this IB system, it involves building familiarity with different questions that you're going to come across. The truth is that questions that the math teachers are relatively lazy. They take questions from Revision Village, they take questions from past papers. You'll find that if you do study past papers, you're not only building familiarity with these sorts of questions, which they are very likely to ask, there will be literally those questions on the tests. And it is very, very helpful to use that approach rather than studying the topics individually.
hmm I've actually not only heard that in math, but like other subjects, they also use just past paper questions on
Yeah.
the tests. Might have to do some investigation in these like teachers, something. All right, but that's conversation for another time. So with all of these subjects, were there any particular subjects that you regret taking personally?
Yes, IB Chinese BHL. It was a big risk. I think a lot of people know, and it has the reputation of being quite easy because a lot of Chinese A students like to drop down to BHL and have it as a comfort course. And if you are an ASL, I highly suggest taking BHL, it'll be a free 7 for you. But for people that are looking to challenge themselves, like me, even though I am Chinese, I live in a household where not a lick of Chinese is spoken. My mother is Malaysian, my dad is Canadian, and their Chinese is non-existent. So with a lack of exposure comes a lack of familiarity with the language, and me deciding to challenge myself with BHL because of what I heard and the reputation it had with with it being easy. Even though I did come away with the 7, there was a lot of luck involved, and I think it's important to know that for kids that are looking to challenge themselves, BHL is not the easiest subject. But for ASL kids, highly recommend.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. Because I think the school is also going to implement a policy where phase 6 or phase 5 students, if you're from CDNIS, you won't be able to take BSL. You won't have the choice, and it's like mandatory to take BHL. So for sure, like considering which path you really want to go to and preparing for subjects earlier on is going to be pretty important. So talking about like the transition between grade 10 to DP, I think is something many people are wondering about. And obviously with different individuals, they have different experiences. So what was there anything that kind of like blew your mind, or how did you approach the DP program if you still remember, like back in grade 10?
Grade 10, wow, it's a lot. That feels like a long time ago. Grade 10 to grade 11, I think the biggest change was just the the pace. I mean, I think the content itself wasn't very, very different. I mean, it was different, but it wasn't necessarily conceptually more difficult or in depth. I'd say near the start, you're learning surface level concepts because you're introducing new courses, right? There's no economics, is there geography? Actually, there is geography, but there's no economics, there's no global politics and these types of subjects that you're taking now in grade 11 that you've chosen, right? This is a new start for you. So they're teaching surface level topics just at a pace that you're perhaps not used to. So I do remember that being my experience where I was a little caught off guard by the pace, the workload, and just the the immediate intensity the DP offered. There was no, you spend the first couple classes in I've been here since reception to grade 10. You always spend the first couple classes, getting to know your classmates, playing fun games to do with the subjects. There's none of that in DP. You're straight into it. I remember my first class, I thought the teacher was going to, go through a whole orientation. He spent 3 minutes introducing himself and went into the first economics lesson. This is the pace that you have to get used to. And that was quite a shocking factor for me during my transition.
You actually make a very good point. Like, I think we just need to really be prepared for this entire like quick pace transition, or else we're going to find ourselves like especially slack behind, especially for people who are finding themselves already kind of behind in grade 10. Like over the summer, I guess would you like suggest anything to prepare yourself in over the summer and like start reading textbooks in advance, or what are your take?
Grade 10 summer, it's a controversial opinion, but I would say my main opinion would be it's your last summer. Enjoy yourself. Because grade 11 summer, I'm not kidding you. It's about the math IA, it's about preparing for grade 12 because you've just been hit by a truck in grade 11. So I think it's really important in grade 10 that you maintain your balance between, okay, you could prepare, especially for subjects that you're new to, such as you're taking economics and you've had no previous exposure, then I highly suggest taking a look at, a couple videos and preparation courses, things like that. But for like genuinely, staying focused and studying the subject beforehand, I don't think there's much need for that, especially when this summer is going to be, your last one for a while until the grade 12. So, I highly suggest, relax, spend some time with your family. There won't be much of that in the TP program.
So in terms of like, your daily schedule, I know you said that you don't really have a daily schedule, but like on average for like a person who doesn't really, I guess, like study a lot in like the beginning, like what could you like give like a general overview of like how your daily schedule looks like?
Sure, yeah. I would come home at around 4:20 from the bus. I'd get home, shower, I'd go for a run and then head to the gym. And by the time I'm home, it would be about 5:30. So then I would shower at 6. It's basically dinner time. So I'd eat dinner. And I mostly started my work right after dinner. So that would be taking and tackling homework I received. Yeah, homework was a thing back then. I forgot homework that had to be done and just got assigned today. I finished all of that. All your homework should be done on time, and it should be done on the day it's given, so it doesn't build up. And I feel like that's very underrated. A lot of people abuse the fact that it's due tomorrow, so I'll do it tomorrow. Right? Do tomorrow, do tomorrow. But it helps a lot more if you finish it on the day it's given, and it just lets you not get caught up by the workload. And if you do that every day, you just do the things that you're given, you'll find that the IB is very manageable. So that's what my schedule would look like. I would work from, let's say, 6:30 after I finish dinner to around 9:30. From 9:30 onwards, I would do my own thing. I'd relax. Play a game, play FIFA or something, and spend time with my family. I spend quite a lot of time with my family, considering the workload as well. And then I'd go to bed at around 10:30, which was quite rare for people in my grade, but it worked out fine, and it was a good way for me to stay focused for the next day. I found that a lot of my classmates were sleeping in class, very tired, but because I managed to sleep earlier at 10:30, and that allowed, the full 8 hours of sleep, and so I was ready to stay awake and learn in class every day, and that way I didn't have to spend as much time studying for each test.
Hmm. Yeah, I like how you emphasize the point of sleep. I think many people underestimate how important sleep is, like how it can be a chain. Because if you have one bad night of sleep, you're gonna have a bad morning. When you have a bad morning, you're gonna have a bad day. When you have a bad day, it just keeps going on until you decide to fix your sleep routine and actually get the whole 8 hours. So, like back to your point of doing homework. So the stuff that the teacher gives you, right? If you manage to complete all of the stuff that teacher gives you, do you think that is already enough to get you like the level 7 or the level 6 on a test, considering you only study the stuff in the tech, like in this, in the homework, rather than going outside and doing further extensive research? Do you think that's already enough?
That is a good point, Bosco. When it comes to homework, it is assigned to everyone, and if you're doing what everyone else is doing, you're not going to get a 7. That's the truth. Maybe for easier subjects that may be the case, but for harder subjects, definitely not, because it's about applying. Like homework, the main focus for people is get it done fast, get it done to a quality that the teacher won't mind, right? And turn it in, and then you're done for the day. But to be genuinely successful and achieve that level 7, it's about taking that homework, taking that knowledge, not idly doing it, watching Netflix on the side, which I fell victim to a couple times. But it's about genuinely looking at what you're doing, focusing on how that homework you just did applies to the context of the wider subject. How are you going to use that knowledge that you just learned from that piece of homework on the next test? It's about keeping these constant reminders for different tips and tricks that you're picking up along the way. Because we have to first think, why are they giving us homework in the first place, right? Sometimes it's just that we think it's just the teachers being annoying, but sometimes for economics, I find that during tests, I would randomly, recall different concepts that I read, wrote down notes for that I forgot even existed, but it would just come up in my brain because this homework is a form of active recall that can be very useful. So instead of idly doing homework and allowing it to be, a liability in your time, instead, I encourage students to be more proactive in the way they do homework, such that it can be more effectively applied to achieve a level 7.
Yeah, so like just taking in all of the information and just consolidating it in your brain. So then I guess when it comes to test time, you don't have to panic and just revise the entire unit again because you realize that you didn't really get any information in when you're doing the homework. So that's a pretty important point. So with like most of the test stuff, like did you actually personally do like extra research on a particular topic in the past? And for which subjects maybe?
I'd have to say no. I very much stay inside the curriculum person. I found that people that genuinely love the subject, they would expand outwards. But my priority, there's no subject that I love to the extent where I would study outside the course, because that was not only time consuming, but it's also not relevant to the tests. There were some students that I met that were very interested in subjects such as biology, and they would study sometimes the extra content or the small things on each of the slides that clearly were not going to be tested on. And I found that, sometimes even though they love the subject and spend a lot of time on it, they would be less successful because genuinely these topics are not going to be on the test. It's about, balancing the probabilities. Is that small 18 letter long word term going to be tested on that test? Do you have to memorize that? Probably not. So when we're studying, it's important to, prioritize what's important and what's not. And sometimes that means staying inside the course rather than exploring outside. But then again, if you really love your subject, you can do extra research. I'm not discouraging that. But if you want to do well in tests, I'd suggest perfecting what's inside the course. And then once you've perfected that, you can move on to outside.
Yeah, I really like your approach, like tackling the IB like it's a mathematical game, right? So many things are controlled by mathematics in the world. So have like measuring the probability of what will come up most likely in the test and then revising for that. So like let's just say, for example, if in the final exam your let's just say I'm gonna take an example of my current grade. So grade 10, you're taking general science, right? And you have physics, chemistry, and bio. And how they are splitting it is 40% physics, 40% chemistry, and 40% physics, 30% chemistry, and 30% biology. This probably means that you should study more physics because they're going to put more physics on the test, right? It's about getting the points, right? Which is an important factor at IB. And then after that, you're probably going to choose, if you're not really a memorization guy, you're probably going to choose like chemistry. But if you're more a memorization guy, then you choose biology, right? You want to play to your advantage and really just try and not really expose your weakness and try to get as many points as you can. Because at the end of the day, I guess like 99% of people, it's about getting the IB grades, right? So then you could get to your good university, and then from university you could learn, crazy stuff, meet different people and network and stuff. And I think that's the most important point that Russell have brought in here today. So outside of the subjects, let's talk about like CAS and TOK. So what do you actually do for CAS?
So for CAS, for creativity, I was the co-president of the Rubik's Cube Club, and that was also encompassed my CAS project, which was to start like an online program with my friend Ollie, where people and members of my club could receive weekly feedback on a solve that they did, such that they could improve for the next week after that. And that was just a small little program we did where we would provide helpful feedback, new algorithms to learn, along with meetings every week for our club. And that was sufficient to qualify for a CAS project. So my CAS project was in creativity. Another thing I did for creativity was learning photography and editing on a laptop and simple stuff on Adobe Photoshop and online editing software. As for service, I did Kids for Kids, the local engagement sector, helping out underprivileged kids learn English in the Cantonese local community, as well as the MYP Reading Club and Reading Tree, which was helping grade 6 to 8 students with reading, and they were relatively underdeveloped for their age, so it was often a challenge, but it's about building these experiences and encouraging them to read more. And I specifically had a partner that was dyslexic, and we worked on his reading for I think the course of 1.5 years, and he definitely made improvements. So that was my 2 service experiences. And for activity, I obviously had football. I trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as well as I did badminton. And yeah, the list goes on. I definitely outweighed my activity in the balance of CAS, but in the end, there's only a certain quota that you have to meet. So I suggest meeting the minimum because you have a lot of academics to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. I see that you're pretty like into all of the different, CAS parts, which are pretty good. So did you think, were you like grateful that the IB program did have CAS, and do you think it kind of helped shape, many experiences and, what you're going to be doing in the future?
Well, I hope Mr. Lee isn't seeing this, but I think it was one of the greatest wastes of time in the IB. It's just the reflections, the whole process detracts from the work that you have to do for your subjects. People are, whether the school expects it or not, people are engaging in CAS experiences all the time. Expecting them to do reflections and keeping up, and their expectations are often very, very, unrealistic for someone that's already struggling with the difficulty of the TP program. So I do believe CAS was very unnecessary. But, not to discourage you guys, because there's a lot of obviously younger people that are going to move into the TP. You have to succeed in the CAS program, you just have to stay afloat by keeping up to date and not letting CAS fall back on you. I know people that had 0 reflections at the end of the year and then had to write 40 different reflections at 7:30 in the morning in CAS jail. Sometimes it's more worth it to get on top of it right now than do it later, because up at 7:30 in the morning is not somewhere you want to be.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, and I get what you mean, because like I'm not gonna try and say anything bad here, but like I guess like many people are already doing different casts and different services, but having to write 40 reflections, from what I'm hearing, is for sure not something that many people would like to do. And yeah, I mean, with TOK, like what was your experience with that? Like I heard from Anson, he was mentioning how TOK was actually a really big struggle for him because of the whole entire knowledge and philosophical parts which you had to write about. So how was actually TOK for you?
TOK, I think it really depends on the type of person you are. It can be a subject that someone finds quite easy and some that find quite difficult. It is very much commensurate to the extent at which you have a handle of the English language. It's very much an English-based subject, and it matters how well you write and how well you articulate your thoughts. For me, it does come easier. For Anson, I think we're both good in English. We both have a sense for English, but it's also combining your knowledge of English with your ability to articulate original thought. And that's what a lot of TOK teachers are looking for. They're looking for people with original thinking as well as good writing to pair together to form a very insightful piece of work. And that's quite rare nowadays, which is why people struggle so much with TOK. But for me specifically, I trailed along near the minimum requirement is that it's needed to get an A, because I didn't want to waste my energy, as of course we have the other subjects, and also we have the EE as well, right, which combines together to form your ideally 3 points. So I found myself getting 8s, 9s, 8s, 9s, and for the TOK essay I did get an 8. So I wouldn't worry about getting any higher than that, because realistically that's enough for you to get AA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like one question about the TOK, which you have just now mentioned. So in terms of like the knowledge of English, do you mean like vocabulary knowledge, grammar knowledge, or do you mean like you need analysis knowledge? Could you maybe clarify that part?
Yes, although it's sometimes looked down upon to use big words, all this type of concept, it's important that you're able to express your thoughts, but use sophisticated vocabulary, but correctly. I find that in a lot of my grade 11 friends, they have really good vocabulary, and I can tell some of them, I've been looking online for good vocabulary. But if you don't use it right, then it doesn't actually help with, the extent of your analysis. Really good language can really help complement good analysis, which gets you into those higher levels of 8, 9, and 10. And yeah, what I mean by this grasp of the English knowledge, it's about turning your ideas and making them very clear in a way that the teacher can really empathize with what you're thinking, and where it makes sense when read on a piece of paper and by an examiner, where they are impressed with your original ideas as well as the way you have expressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I'm also like curious with your timetable. Like, do you also find some time to personally like read, or like how do you get this entire vocabulary?
I think as for English, I think it's normally obtained through reading, but I don't actually really like to read. In fact, although it's not, I don't encourage it. For the books Murakami, Ocean Vuong, uh, Jump and Other Stories, The Doll's House, I never read one the whole book ever. even for the ending paper 2, I never read the book. So you can get away with understanding the English language without reading books. Even watching videos, listening to like smart people talk, if you can absorb that type of vocabulary and knowledge and experience. But what I found with English is that there are very few people that can do that, and it's I wouldn't put a lot of pressure on myself to learn that type of vocabulary. When it comes to the IB, there are ways where you can take a formulaic approach to English. Although it is inherently quite a creative subject, if you apply, what you're learning in class with the different structures, they give you vocabulary as well. If you effectively use those and stay within the curriculum, it's still very possible to get a 7. I mean, I have a friend, Keith, and he's a 45. And when it comes to English, I talked to him. He sounds like a normal guy. English, he wasn't amazing, but when he came to the DP, he found a more formulaic approach to English by applying the terminology in Google Classroom, using sophisticated literary devices, and despite the lack of creativity, he achieved a 7. So I think that a grasp of the English knowledge doesn't necessarily, in the context of the IB, doesn't necessarily mean you're talented at English. It means being able to apply what you've learned in English class and use it well, even in the context of COK.
Yeah, I really like your grasp, because I think there's many people who think that English is a subjective subject. But I mean, in reality, it kind of is. But again, there's like a specific structure that you should be following. And I think just being able to find the kind of like secret sauce or like secret formula for each subject would really make it a better time for you in DP, especially when studying what and like practicing on what sorts of things. So let's transition now to more outside of school stuff. So like the environment and your friends' impact on your academics. So the people that you surround yourself with, and we all know the saying of if you surround yourself with smart people, you would automatically become smarter. So let's talk about like the physical environment first. So what would you say is like a good environment for particularly yourself? And do you like follow like a specific routine where you just not only like go home, but do you also like study outside?
The physical environment, yes. For me, I prefer to work at home because it's where I'm comfortable and it's where I've developed my studying habits. But I know people that like to study in the library, like to study at school in the hallways. I think it's different for everyone. For the physical environment, the physical environment is just a semantics. It's just where you're comfortable working, and for different people that means different things.
Yeah, I get what you mean. And like in terms of like studying alone versus studying with friends, which one do you think is like more effective?
So, in my opinion, I find that studying alone when you're reviewing the content is better, but studying with friends is helpful near the ending parts before the tests. This is because when you're studying alone, you can obviously compile your thoughts better. You're not distracted by your friends. You're relearning the content and you're rememorizing the content. So this doesn't need to be a group effort. But after you have developed a level of mastery over the knowledge required for you to study for your test, then you can kind of abuse the knowledge and the expertise from your friends that have studied the same content. And by putting yourself with this group of people, then you've complemented each other's knowledge bases, and it allows you guys to subconsciously fill in the knowledge gaps that you have. And so that's why it's helpful before the tests to make your knowledge more well-rounded with the knowledge of other people. So if you split up your time into working individually and working in a group, and in this type of way, that both these methods of studying can be beneficial.
Yeah, so like there's also like this very interesting question of like how you can kind of like strike the balance with like maintaining healthy social life, also dedicating enough time to studying, especially when there's so many different things going on with the 6 subjects, as well as CAS, TOK, EE, etc. So, what would you say is a pretty solid strategy that many people could follow? And like, if you, okay, let's just say, for example, you were to go back and kind of like set a personal routine or do some kind of different tricks to help kind of maintain this balance, what would you say is a pretty good, uh, I'll say like pretty good, yeah, routine to follow?
For your social life, I think it's important to stay social at school, especially because you don't have a lot of time outside of school because you're so busy studying. Even though the teacher says not to talk, make the school an enjoyable experience where you can have a social life inside of school. During your classes, talk to people. I mean, school is, when it comes to CDNAS, your parents, are all very wealthy. There's a reason why they put you in this school. It's the 17th best school in the world. And, it's all about building connections with people that you can have, sometimes lifelong relationships with. And yeah, building these types of connections are part of coming to the school. It's one of the benefits. It's what your parents are kind of paying for. So it's important to have the social life inside of school. Obviously, outside of school, you're busy studying, but I know, spend some time during the weekend. I would tell myself, my old self, spend more time with your friends over the weekend. It's not, sometimes it's just not that important. That grade 11 summative, if you got a 5 in that instead of a 6, it's not the end of the world. You can bring it back up. And it wasn't because you met your friend last Saturday for a couple hours. These types of breaks that you can insert into your life where you can experience social interaction are very important. Even academically, it's giving you that break for your head so that you can come back to work refreshed and ready to learn.
I really like the point that you mentioned there, of like studying a bit less, even though you're going to be getting like a lower grade, but then spending more time, outside with friends and stuff. Because I think it's also very important to map out like kind of what IB grade you personally want, because not everyone like needs like a 45. I mean, like if someone is going to, to like a chiller university, so like let's just say for example Australia or Canada, they're probably pretty happy with like a 36 or something. So there's actually no point of sacrificing time to study so much, and yeah, and just being able to like not enjoy yourself because you have to do so much studying, but rather like prioritizing mental health and prioritizing socializing if your goals really aren't to reach the 45 mark. Yeah, so I also like see that you're like the captain. As mentioned, you're the captain of the U20 football team. You guys went to CSAC and won the Div 2 trophy, first place. And you also like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is actually a pretty unique sport there. So, and also like building keyboards. So you probably have like a really good approach with like work-life balance. So what was your overall story with these interests? Like how did these interests spark?
Sure. I mean, I'll start with keyboards because that seems very random in the grand scheme of my personality. So keyboards, I just started, everyone uses a keyboard. Think when you're when you're thinking about interests and what interests you, it's what you're exposed to on a daily basis. So, everyone's using a keyboard. That's your method of communication, your method of working, and your method of texting your friends, So I found, if I'm going to be using this every day, how about I make it into something that I really like, you know? So actually, I'll grab, this is the keyboard that I made for my dad. And so, for his birthday. And so I just found that it was therapeutic. Obviously, it's expensive at times. Not if you get it from Taobao like me, though. But it's a hobby where you can really grind out work. It's time consuming, but it takes your mind off other things, and that's how I developed my interest. Because I just love to make these things for my friends and my family. Even this summer, I'm planning to make one for my cousin and my friend Ollie. And this is just because it offers a time of relaxation for me, as well as a time just to do some manual labor and have some fun. As for football was quite unique. Football, I used to be in a club for about 10 years. When I started when I was 3 years old and ended in grade 10. And I found that, after a year taking a break from grade 10 to 11, where I didn't participate in football, I found that a part of me was lost. And although football was kind of pushing me too much, and that's why I quit in grade 10, I found that like a part of me was missing. So I started to develop an interest in it again. And obviously, my team, an amazing group of kids that I've grown up with over time. It's been amazing. I've just continued to develop this interest as we've won, as I've become more integrated with the team, and obviously becoming the co-captain with Ty. It's just this feeling, this euphoria of winning with your team, winning with your school that you've been associated with for 14 years. There's no interest quite like it. Even just yesterday, we won bronze for ISS FHK, and just being that, having that sense of, wow, what a day, what a year. There's just nothing like sports, nothing like football, nothing you'll ever experience, academically. Even getting that 7 in a test that you got a 4 in, there's just nothing you'll experience quite like, winning a penalty shootout in a final, So as an interest, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I really like how you mentioned about like the football, like the overall, community and like your teammates and like this overall sense which can really be replaceable, and it's just all about the experiences which really shapes the entire thing. And even at the end, like I like to emphasize more on like the journey. It's not really about the destination, right? Like it's not really about winning or losing, but at the end of the day it's about the group of people that you spend the most time with. So with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think you kind of missed it, but I'm actually really curious with that. Like how did you first like learn about that sport? I mean, it's not that, common sport, so.
Sure. Well, it was a statistic that was released in 2021, I believe, that 80% of fights that someone will encounter on the street will end up on the ground. And when it comes to the ground game, this is where someone that trains in boxing or Muay Thai would struggle in, and where someone experienced in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would dominate. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was first popularized in the UFC when they found that when a knockdown occurred and someone was on the ground, a person with superior Jiu-Jitsu would submit or control an opponent. So this is where my interest sparked. My dad had a friend which owned a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym, and I found myself immersed in it immediately. It's quite unlike any other combat sport you begin with. Boxing, you start by hitting pads. Muay Thai, you start by hitting the pads on your coach, right? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're tossed into a confrontation with another person that you haven't met before, and you're sparring immediately. And this sense of realism, the sense of immediate danger and being able to respond, no sport replicates the beginner experience quite like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it's about being comfortable in situations when you are genuinely uncomfortable. Many people on the street, let's say you encounter a fight, if all you've done is kick pads and you have to kick a person, there's quite a disparity there. You haven't hurt someone, you haven't actually had to fight someone that's resisting. With Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, this is not the case at all. You're fighting someone that has the same knowledge as you or is more experienced, and you have to overcome someone that is genuinely, sometimes trying to hurt you, submit you. You meet all different types of people. Some people are sadistic. They want to hurt you. Some people are very helpful and will become lifelong friends. But this environment is something that not a lot of people have experienced, and which is why I'm so interested in it. It's because, it prepares you quite like nothing else can.
This actually sounds very fun and also like very, very motivating. I actually got to try Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sometime as well. And I guess like having this sense of safety, or like this also like training the mindset, but also like preparing for anything dangerous that's going to happen in the future, as you never know, what you're going to approach, and just being calm in like these situations, and like just, I guess like having this capability of actually reacting to, dangerous people on the streets, especially like if you're going to go outside, like Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong's a pretty safe place to consider, but if you go to like the US and stuff, it's going to be more chaotic there, especially with so many protests and the stuff's going on in Israel and stuff. So with your current IB score and your current IB grades, what profession and major do you plan to do in the future?
Sure. Right now, I am balancing the very difficult decision choosing between UBC and University of Toronto. I've decided to steer away from UK, steer away from my LSE and UCL decisions, as I am a Canadian citizen, and obviously the monetary side of university is very important. Instead of a $35,000 Canadian, which is around 35 times 6, I'm terrible at math. Anyways, a lot of money for an international student. I am a local kid, so I've 5,000 Canadian, so that's 30,000 per year, and that's about 1/8, of not 1/8. I'm terrible at math. Around a small portion of a year at Canadian International School. So that's why I've chosen for these two options. So I'm leaning more towards University of Toronto, so I'll talk about that. I'm looking to major in neuroscience, and it's a great fit for all my different subjects. And yeah, I'm hoping to go there and have some fun and learn the subject that I want to learn.
Yeah, for sure. That monetary thing. That's why actually one of the main reasons why I'm planning to also go to Australia is because I actually have like a PR there. So the pricing there is actually pretty cheap. So I think, yeah, we should probably obviously like take advantage of this. And I guess like it really depends on the personal self again. Like how much do you value university and what type of environment do you really want to be in? Like, is it worth paying 5 times the price to go to like a US top school? Obviously there'll be crazy networks, right? For like a business guy, it's probably going to be really helpful. But I guess like, with the digital world, it's so easy to connect with people that you want just like this, right? So like, are you willing to pay the 5x the price to go to like a top university? And like, you also have to like think about, I guess, like the people who actually go to the university, right? Like what type of people would they attract based on, their requirements? So like, yeah, I guess like making that personal decision is actually pretty important. So with neuroscience, what are you planning to do in the future after uni?
That's a very hard question. Well, in the current environment, my dad and from my research have suggested that a bachelor's degree is really just not enough for the job environment there is nowadays. So I'm looking on to potentially a master's or maybe going to medicine. I don't know. It's very unsure in my future because I haven't chosen a type of major that immediately leads you to a certain job, such as medicine or dentistry. So I'm looking to maybe have further studies, and the main job maybe I'm looking at would be to work for firms, manage big data, and behavioral psychology positions. Because nowadays, understanding human behavior is one of the biggest mysteries and is very important for both earning money and the state of human development.
Yeah, I'm personally actually pretty interested. Like it's unfortunate how like Canadian National does not provide psychology as a subject for
Yes.
IB. That's for sure. Like I think I heard many people are also probably complaining about that. It's really a pity, but yeah, that sounds like a pretty good path. Like I'm also like wondering, like in the future, have you ever considered, I don't know, starting your own like keyboard business or something like that?
Well, as my dad always tells me, he obviously gives a lot of good advice, is that although a lot of people have these passions and they have these hobbies, in life we have to be able to set them aside. Not set them aside, but place them into a different portion of our lives. A lot of people decide to intermix their hobbies with their jobs, and it can often lead to, a lack of success. So it's important that, my hobbies such as keyboards, although, I love it. It's, I love it. It's one of my hobbies. Also love football. Why don't I pursue a football career? These types of hobbies should be placed in the hobby side of life. And, for jobs, obviously money is quite important, and being practical in the sense of the real world is also important. So no, that hasn't been one of my considerations. I'm not discouraging people that have a passion for their hobbies to mix it into their occupations, but it's important to balance practicality with fun.
It's a pretty interesting approach because I don't know, but like if you see on like the online space, many people are just telling you to, I guess, like start your own business, but I guess they underestimate how hard it is and like, the overall backworks, and there's many things of starting your own business, including, the marketing stuff and, the finance stuff, many things that you don't really see on the surface. So yeah, I really like your approach. And I guess like doing business is probably not for everyone to a certain sense. And like, I also heard that, you talked about applying to a camp counselor. So could you also briefly describe like what's up with that and like what's your overall goals?
Sure. I mean, nowadays it's all about building experience, right? For this summer, I can't let it go to waste. You know, I have no math IA to do, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be proactive in gaining experience, you know, building my resume. So I've decided to apply for the YMCA part-time camp counselor position. My sister did it, and it was great fun, she said. So that's just about, you know, facilitating kids' activities down in YMCA and helping kids that are going to do summer camps. So it's a very standard type of position, you know, a very standard rate. But although it doesn't, you know, it's not specific or hyper specific to the program that I plan to pursue, it's just about building experience and, you know, gaining a rapport on your resume that you've had, you know, good experiences. You're capable of leadership. You know, you're capable of holding a job. So maybe that'll help me in the future.
So just the experience part, which is most important. Yeah, got you. So purpose, you know, the topic of having like, you know, what your purpose in life is. What do you believe is your own purpose?
That's a very big question, isn't it?
You can take some time. You can take some time to think about it.
Yeah. Sorry, wait, let me take a look at. I think I wrote something down. It's something that you think about at 3 a.m. in the morning when you can't sleep, isn't it? Yeah. There was a quote that I found in a very, very inspirational YouTube video one day. It's quotes, not so much quotes. You'll never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. That's the first one. And just go find someone out there and abuse them with your love. Those are two that stick out to me. You know, I think life is about, you know, of course, making the most of it, but also creating memories that you'll remember in the future. When you're 70, you're lying there, you can't move anymore. Remembering the amazing life you've had, you know, experiencing love. I think that's very important as well. And obviously achieving a sort of success that you're happy with. Not necessarily material wealth, but achieving success in your perspective. That's my purpose.
So in terms of success, what would you personally define as success? You know, a successful life.
Wow, you're really trying to get me to say money, isn't it?
No. Like many people, different things, you know?
Of course. I think success is about being happy, but also having money. Because I can be pretty happy with a lot of money. So I would say money is a big part of it. But also, you know, perhaps something to look for in the future, you know, finding love, raising a family, all that type of stuff. Finding someone to share your happiness with. Finding friends. That could be just friends. That could be friends. That could be a relationship. All those things contribute to me as success.
And I think that term of, you know, happiness, I always believe that happiness is kind of like a choice, because you can always see things in two different ways, and really is up to yourself to determine like how you want to see things. So for example, if let's just say you're like 5 minutes late to class, you can obviously moan about it. Your attendance record is gonna get bombed because of this for some reason. And on the other hand, I mean, you can probably say like at least it's 5 more minutes of not listening to the teacher and having like a good, you know, state of peace, you know, in your mind, and, you know, being prepared for the lesson, and yeah, just doing this whole preparation. So yeah, you actually bring up a pretty good point. You know, happiness is really they're really determined by yourself, and yeah, there's really not a single purpose for everyone. So before we end this,
I agree.
I've actually asked like a handful of people in my grade, you know, on their biggest fears with the IB program, and I've kind of filtered down to like the couple of questions. So since you're actually taking biology, like many people are actually wondering how, like, they're thinking that the marking scheme, I assume, is pretty hard, like pretty harsh. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's all about the mark scheme. What do I think about that? It's just something you're going to have to deal with. It's all about, you know, people find in biology, you know, biology is not English. Don't use 300 words to express something that can be done in 10. And make those 10, every single word, be something you've seen on a slide. Don't start, you know, slipping in the transition words. You know, don't make it sound nice. You know, when you look at that question, you should know this is what they're looking for. These are the words that I need to know. And slip those in and make a nice, clear sentence. Every single answer that I've put on there is a jot note. I find people writing these paragraphs. There's absolutely no need for that. You know, be concise, be clear. The mark scheme is there because they need you to understand that your knowledge, there's a parameter for your knowledge. There's no need to, extend yourself outside of that. Answer the question. The mark scheme is there for you to answer the question. So yes, it's harsh, but it's something you have to deal with, and it's a skill that you have to build, not only through past papers, which I highly suggest for biology, because then you get a sense of what words they're looking for, but also just in general. Biology is a words game. Play it. There's no way of beating it. You just have to play the game and memorize those words, memorize those slides.
Mm-hmm. Here you go, guys, from a person who is seventh in biology. Literally just the word game. So with CAS, we've talked about how, there are so many different reflections. So if you could kind of calculate an estimate total, how long did the entire thing, in total, including, the reflection of the entire project, how long did it actually take you to complete it?
So let's say I uploaded a piece of evidence and a reflection every let's say 2 days, right? I never had to pile up my reflections near the end. So let's say 2 hours a week. Not 2 hours a week. What am I saying? Let's say 1 hour and a half a week. Short reflections, pair it with a bit of AI, change it up a little bit, that's about 1 hour and a half a week, I'd say. And you combine that all, it's very manageable. Don't leave it until the last minute. That's the last thing I can suggest. Those people suffered at the end, and they'll tell you they hated waking up at 7:30. Do it when you're, instead of scrolling on Reels for a couple minutes, you can write a reflection. You can type the prompt into AI and get at least a quick framework going. CAS is very manageable. It's stupid, but it's manageable.
Yeah, you make a pretty good point. So with your CAS, did you actually use AI?
Oh, I get the IB diploma in one.
Of course.
Well, hey there. No, but I think it helps as a framework. It helps me. Let's say I have an experience. I can I'll let the AI absorb some information. Let them know a bit. Give me some ideas on what I can reflect about, and then write it yourself. It doesn't have to be word for word written, because there are AI checkers, as was pointed out by some people getting caught last year. ManageBack has their systems. So it's important to, use it as a framework, as a tool, instead of, as a writer.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's a good, beginning idea to, kind of get a grasp of what, you can entirely structure it and what you can put in the response. So actually one last question. And this question is actually about motivation. So for subjects that are kind of categorized as less interesting, what are your strategies on not procrastinating on them and getting through them?
Not interesting. Oh, I immediately think of math. How do you stay motivated? So I think, I have a good idea. This is what I do. I find a new video to have in the background. Not like a Netflix video, right? In the background while I'm studying. There's something very helpful online called Pomodoro study, and it's where you play a video and it helps you. It plays nice music. You can have it has a nice view of a person working, and it has a timer. Let's say for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of working, and then when it comes up to that time, it'll have a timer. Okay, time to take a break. It's a great way to structure your learning. It may not be very science based, but it's a great way to structure your learning, because then you feel accomplished after you look at the duration of the video and you're like, wow, I just did, 3 hours of good work. And it keeps you going. You have the music playing in the background. It's just move everything away as well. Your phone, away, please. I let them know, you're going to get an important message, just throw it away. It's so bad. I pick up my phone, I check a message, and then I look on Reels. Don't do that. Yeah, so have a video like that, like a Pomodoro study. Or even a stupid YouTube video. I had one where it was a 5-hour loop of an Asian of a guy playing an Asian mom that would walk into the room and tell
Hey, shit. My bad.
All good.
Can you repeat that part?
Sure. I had a stupid video that I used to put up where it was a guy pretending to be an Asian mom, and he'd open the door of the video. And he'd say something, why aren't you doing your work? It's just the little things that you can find to motivate yourself. Remove distractions and find ways to, structure your time. And that way it'll build into a long-term habit.
All right, Russell. It's been a really good conversation. So if you had to summarize like one biggest takeaway over your, I don't know, 14 years of being in the school and going in the IBDP, what is one advice, like biggest advice that you'll give to the audience here listening, who's still listening?
It's not the biggest thing that'll happen in your life. It's not the biggest thing that'll happen in your life. So don't treat it as such. But it's important. There you go. It's important, but it's not your entire life. There you go.
It's important, but it's not your entire life. Yeah. All right, guys. This is Russell here, 43 IB. You know, one day left in school. I'm pretty sure he's going to be super stoked. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. And, you know, as usual, we're going to be me and Russell are going to be creating a value doc in the description where we're going to be putting some resources and some study tips, you know, mentioned in the video. So hope you guys enjoy it once again and catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.